Pull to open.
Yes, and what do you do?
I speak baby. Of course you do.
Dear Lord, how do you cope with all that ego?
Oh, he's very difficult sometimes, but he has great knowledge, gentleness.
So this is me, popping in and popping out again.
I bet you say that to all girls.
Well, that killed the mood.
Here come the drums!
So here it comes, the sound of drums. Here come the drums, here come the drums.
Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who in random order. I'm Pete Paschal.
And I'm Chris Taylor, and we're a couple of guys and a couple of journalists who love Doctor Who, have written about it, love to podcast about it, love to trip through its history for the first or the second time, or the third or fourth or fifth time, depending on the story. And we have landed once again in New Who territory.
Yes. There's a lot of New Who territory, I got to say. When we started this journey, Chris, I was like,
yes.
Well, I just because I grew up with Doctor Who, the classic series, and I knew like it was huge then. Like it just seemed there was massive amount of TV to watch.
Yeah.
When we started this, I was thinking, well, we might not go too many like New Who's. The ratio would be mostly classic. But now, like that hasn't been the case. And actually, when I look at like the Codex, which is our list of all the episodes, all the stories, New
pulling
Who's
it up
been
right
around
now
for a while. I don't know if you know this. New Who's got a very respectable amount of stories in it now, and I don't know the exact proportion. I imagine Classic Who still has more hours of television if you counted them all. But there's we've been batting on both sides of this. Pretty evenly so far.
Yeah, in terms of hours, I think you're possibly right. In terms of numbers, so we have 299 stories, discrete
so roughly
stories.
300.
Yeah, actually, we should say we're recording this post Eve of the Daleks, so it has gone up to 299.
That's right. We had to update the Codex.
It's a very exciting time when that happens, and the switch between old and new Who is 159. So there still is.
Oh wow! So it's roughly halfway.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it makes sense that we've sort of done roughly 50-50, but it's not even at all, as you expect from randomness. We've had a fair amount of Tom Baker, but it's all sort of bunched up. Same with Peter Davison, and there are just sort of vast gaps in our experience. And you are linking, I believe, in the show notes to the Pull to Open Codex if you want to check it out at home. Go see where we've been and where we have still to go. And where we have still to go is to a lot of Daleks and Cybermen.
Yeah, well, not to mention Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy. There's two whole doctors we've actually never visited.
Yeah, that don't exist.
Yeah.
That don't exist yet.
Been erased from time.
We have to bring them back.
Yeah, they must be in the death zone. Anyway, it's been a great journey. We've been really excited to go on it with everyone, and especially our friends on TikTok. The TikTok channel is still growing fast. We love all the attention, all the videos. We love the comments. What I've found is that you guys really like the New Who, which is shocking.
Makes sense.
And there was actually a lot of chatter around midnight. One of our most recent New Who prior to this one. And Chris, I remember you kind of sort of said at some point you kind of thought it was forgotten. According to our fans, it is not forgotten. People really like that episode. But there's definitely a lot of good discussion about the monster or lack thereof on our TikTok. So go check that out.
I have. Really I'll just interject that I have met someone who started listening to the podcast recently, and they said Midnight was one of their favorite stories. So I stand corrected, as I often stand on TikTok. I stand corrected.
Yeah, but TikTok's been great. We keep uploading the videos. We're trying to get it almost at a daily cadence. We're doing our best, but keep checking them out. Keep telling your friends about it. We really want to push for 10,000. We're at about 3,300. I know it's an ambitious goal, but I think we can get there. I think you guys are such great fans. Tell your friends about the podcast. Tell them about the TikTok, and go ahead and follow us everywhere. Why not? Instagram, Twitter. Pull to Open or Pull to Open 63, depending on the network.
And 10,000 is really not that much, not that bad of a goal to set. I think, given that we regularly get more than that on individual TikToks, right? One from midnight got 31,000, for example. And that's not anywhere near our record. So, yeah, follow us on TikTok. And, old Who fans, come join us on TikTok. Come on in. The water's lovely.
Yeah. And we might even, maybe we'll try a live at some point. Maybe we could do that. We'll do a live podcast recording on TikTok. I'm just throwing that out there. This is totally unedited.
Whoa. We're doing this live. Literally. Without a net. I'd not even heard that was a thing you could do on TikTok.
You'll be able to see what's edited out, which is like virtually nothing, I will say.
Oh,
but
geez.
it's we could have some moments that make it into the live. So and we could even do something live. We could
for our patrons on TikTok. We will do a special episode.
Indeed.
You only access there. So yeah, it is surprising how good a format TikTok is for the discussion of Doctor Who. And we put all that B-roll in there from the show, and it's kind of become very visual experience. I love watching those things. So I'm kind of, even though I'm kind of the generation that doesn't really get TikTok, I'm falling into it through the Pull to Open account. So
yeah, I think we've cracked the code, Chris, on bridging the gap of the generations. The Pull to Open channel is bringing in Gen X and what was before X? Boomers? Yeah, those.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, boomers.
Previous regenerations, we'll just call them.
I love it.
Yeah, please follow us there. Also, I know those of you who might not be on TikTok are like, damn, how do I support the show? Like, I'm not going to download TikTok. I don't want to give my data to another social network. I get it. Well, here's how you can support the show. You can go to the service you're listening to this podcast on and please leave a review. Those really, really help us get the podcast into the ears. I almost said eyeballs, the ears of more people. That sounds actually kind of strangely more insidious, but you know what I mean? Please go to the service that you're listening to this on. Please leave us a review. Again, we don't want to tell anyone what to write, but we love, love, love those 5-star reviews because they also make the most difference in getting us visible on the service that you're on. So
and the review can be as simple as just give us an emoji thumbs up. I mean, seriously, just how long is that going to take you? Just go to it right now while you're listening. I mean, what else are you doing? Driving? Come on.
When you're stopped. The next light,
the next stoplight.
I guarantee it will take you less time than for the light to change.
There we go. We have to fill in these moments as best we can.
Exactly.
So, shall we talk about the episode that we went to?
Yeah, let's do it.
The story we went to. Closing Time.
Yes. Hot off the heels of our Image of Fendal podcast. We are now at Closing Time.
And it's super weird for a number of reasons. First of all, we were right at the God Complex, which is the episode before Closing Time. Then we went from God Complex to Green Death to Image of Fendal. I can't even remember.
That sounds right.
Where we've recently been, but they're all in the mix of recent shows, and it's been a while. But now here we are back at a moment that is actually 200 years later than the previous episode, so that's kind of interesting than the God Complex. But also, I kind of feel, Pete, like the randomizer is testing the limits of our question of what makes a story, what makes a discrete story in Doctor Who, which is what we had to tackle before we started this podcast, right? The thing about Closing Time is it makes such a good pairing with The Lodger.
Yes,
the other show starring this character Craig, played by a guy named James Corden. I wonder what happened to that guy.
Long forgotten.
Yeah.
Best known for his work on Doctor Who, though.
Really, really best known for that. And if he'd appeared more times, he would have hit the big time. But he might be on screen in America today. You never know.
He's quite good.
He's pretty good in this.
When you say 200 years later, you're talking about the Doctor's personal time stream, I believe.
Yes.
Just so I'm clear, I was a little confused there.
At the end of the God Complex, and we'll get into the TLDW of it very shortly, but at the end of the God Complex, he drops off Amy and Rory, and then he, in Closing Time, he's about to die. So, on the shores of Lake Silencia, when we know he's 200 years older, so he's been traveling for 200 years between these episodes, and Randomizer sort of, I think, winking at that fact, taking us on a little diversion before it comes back. But it's also testing us because it's saying, would you watch Closing Time without the Lodger? They make such a good pair. How about I throw them at you in the wrong order?
Right,
which
right.
it has effectively done. Someday it will take us to the lodger, right? And then we'll recall this. And it's a very timey-wimey way to experience Doctor Who, but it's also a little infuriating if you love both episodes as I do, to have to watch them in this order. And then the other thing that it is testing is the fact that season 6 of the new show, which is what this is kind of one long story in a
Right.
way, which we get to see at the end of closing time when there's this little coda, like this little pre-credits, it's like a pre-credits, post-credits sequence, as we might
Right.
call it today, where River is basically taken to the astronaut costume and Lake Silencio, and the moment where she's going to kill the Doctor at the beginning of the next episode. So
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, and I don't want to get too far into it before we do the TLDW, but yeah, this is an interesting place to go because of all the stuff that's what they were trying to do in this season in Series 6. So it was more arc plotty than even the last season with the Cracks in Time, or the
yeah.
previous season. And this one definitely, beyond just the coda at the end, it definitely has something ominous in the background throughout, right? So and that so it's very interesting to watch it out of order and thinking about sort of revisiting this very specific time in the Doctor's timeline, which is
Yeah.
kind of unique for other reasons. But let's get to it all in a minute, because you have exactly a minute, Chris,
Oh boy.
to summarize the story here. Yes, it's time for our favorite feature on Pull to Open, TLDW, Too Long Doctor Who, or Too Long Didn't Watch, but we know you all watched it. But we need to go over all the basics before we can get to the good stuff. So, Chris, are you ready?
Yeah, let me just close the loop on what I was saying by saying I think the randomizer was testing us, but I think we won. I think we had a good experience with this episode anyway.
Yeah.
And I loved seeing it again.
Well, the randomizer said, wow, we worship the randomizer now.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Actually,
we stand a randomizer. But yeah, I feel actually quite confident about TLDW today. I feel like it's a nice simple story. We've said that before, and we've gone over the minute mark, but I think I'm feeling good. But as regular listeners know, we're doing this live without a net, without any notes in front of us, merely from the top of my head and the memory of having watched it 2 days ago. I'm going to summarize the entire history of Closing Time in 1 minute.
A minute
so.
flat.
Yep.
All right, sir. You had better start in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so the Doctor's old friend Craig is a father now. He's got a baby, and the baby is called Alfie, but the baby calls itself Stormageddon because the Doctor can speak baby. And the Doctor's come back to visit Craig, and he's sort of ignoring all of this stuff that's going on, flashing lights, people disappearing in a local department store, but he can't ignore it because he's the Doctor, so he goes to work in the department store and discovers that there are Cybermen underneath it, and they're converting people, and Craig comes along and helps him to investigate with Alfie / Stormageddon in a papoose. Amy Pond and Rory are briefly in the store, but the Doctor doesn't go to say hi to them because he's sad because he's about to die. And they basically, Craig and the Doctor go and they investigate the Cybermen ship while the baby's upstairs, and Craig almost gets converted, but then he hears Alfie crying, and he breaks out of the conversion because of the power of love, and he defeats the Cybermen, this tiny Cyberman unit, and the Doctor basically makes him good dad, cleans up the house, and then goes off into the TARDIS and runs away forever.
And time. Wow.
I didn't quite get to the coda, but yeah. The story of Closing Time itself.
Yeah,
I missed. What did I miss? I missed the Cybermat Bitey.
A little bit, and them getting kind of mistaken for partners.
Yes,
here and there, but that's probably more background than key plot elements. But yeah, no, you nailed it.
It is a simple story.
Yeah,
which I like about it. It's not universe-shattering stakes.
Well, exactly what they were trying to do, certainly. Like, basically, because the following episode is about to go into those full-on universe-shattering stakes. So there's no question they wanted, okay, well, we got to do something a little lighter, better paced, better, more personal, and give sort of this picture of where the Doctor's at. Like, his vibe and his mental state as he sort of goes into this inevitable thing that he thinks he has to go through, which is obviously getting killed at the lake later.
And
So
it's really an episode that is about the Doctor and his human friends. Let's not get quite into the debate yet about whether Craig is or is not a companion. He's a mate. He's clearly a mate. He's a friend of the Doctor, and they are mistaken for more than friends. I think with good reason, because there's good chemistry between them. And so much of the episode is about why the Doctor needs human beings around. I mean, at first, there's one hilarious line, one of many, many beautiful, hilarious lines in this episode, where the Doctor basically reveals that he takes a human companion around because it's the equivalent of walking around a department store with a baby to get people to talk to you, because the baby's cute. People like you having a baby with you because it's something to talk about. And that's the Doctor is comparing this in a very insulting, but blithe way that the Doctor has to. This is why he keeps a human companion around at all times. We're basically his babies wandering through the cosmos with him.
Well, and specifically, I think all that really works for the Matt Smith version of the Doctor. And I got to say, he is like at his finest here in terms of his bonkers, off the wall nature. Which I don't know if this is something James Corden brings out of him, the character brings out of him, the how these episodes are written brings out of him. But like Matt Smith is like full on. Like it's such a great double act, right? And it's if we were cheeky about James Corden before, but it's a fun reversal for even knowing that actor / performer, because he is usually the funny guy, and here he is the straight man to Matt Smith's Doctor, who is absolutely nuts. And there's so many hilarious lines, and you're at the point where like I can't even, and I mean this in a good way, like I'm not sure when to take him seriously about what he talks about. Like he speaks baby, which I know this isn't the first time he's said it, but it's
Good Man Goes to War was his first speaking of baby.
But I feel like it's such a good question. Like, is he just putting people on? Like, and he's just kind of making stuff up? Because I think that's kind of what it feels like to me. Like he's just sort of like being a funny dude and reading the baby a little bit and just pretending like he's hearing what they're saying.
You can never quite tell with the Doctor because he does like his straight-faced japes.
Yeah.
He just absolutely loves that. But I think with the Doctor, I mean, rule number one, the Doctor lies, so we don't fundamentally know. But I would sort of take him at his word more often than not. And he certainly demonstrates in this episode that he can get a human being of perhaps less than average IQ to go to shush once, when he says shushed, and this happens 3 times during the episode. It's a wonderful comic moment. But the range that Matt Smith displays in this episode is phenomenal. He goes from being the most haggard, down at heel, kind of I'm going to die, kind of, and Matt Smith really, in terms of his eyes, when he wants to look tired. Oh boy, he can look every one of the Doctor's 2,000 years.
Yeah, he can turn it on in a heartbeat.
He really can. He is. There's a great line from Day of the Doctor where Clara compliments the War Doctor's eyes and how young they look, and Matt Smith really has the opposite. He really has the oldest eyes of any Doctor, I believe.
Well, and I like that bit at the end where he's sort of talking to the kids and looking at them and turning on the very eyes we're talking about. And it was, just say, tell them I was here to help. Was that what he says? I was here to help.
I was here to help. Yeah.
Which I think,
that's a beautiful scene.
Well, I also just think that's a beautiful tagline for the Doctor. That here to help. I mean, it's just like that's I could see that on like DVD covers even.
Yes. Hello, I'm the Doctor.
Help.
I'm here to help.
Yeah.
Wouldn't go down well in America. I think it might remind people of the whole "I'm from the government and I'm here to help" thing that Reagan said was the scariest sentence in the English language, but certainly works in other countries. But anyway, he goes the range of that extremely sad, extremely dark to playing with toys and talking to kids on their level about that your parents are only going to waste this money on like what was he even say, mortgages and stuff,
vegetables, lamps.
Vegetables and lamps. You'll find your parents in lamps. I love that whole segment where he's playing with a little Aibo-like dog, and he says it's not as fun as I remember robot dogs being. By the way, Another reason for the randomizer to take us here after Image of Fendal, which features the Doctor basically claiming K9 as his own dog. So it's a nice contrast there. But
Also,
the
neither one
joy.
actually has K9. The image of the doll was he's kind of broken in both sides of it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Which is sort of like, you could summarize the Image of Fendal as the robot dog's not as much fun as I remember.
Right. Yeah.
So this kind of works for that reason. But the joy in his eyes in those scenes, he's flying helicopters and just he's so proud to have gotten a job in a shop.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, I know that there was a mini-sode before closing time that deals with Craig and the baby and his partner, and but I really think that there needs to be a mini-sode showing how did the Doctor get a job.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Does he?
That would have been a better choice.
Flash his psychic paper and just like, oh yeah, sure, your name is the Doctor on this official form that I'm filling in with your, national insurance number and everything else that you had to do to get a job in the UK.
Well, and I love that he's instantly the most popular worker.
Yes.
At the department store, just like that, because that's you kind of get it, like you kind of believe it, even though there's obviously a lot of stuff happened off screen for that to happen, but he vouches for Craig at one point, and the security guard's just like, oh yeah, then if the Doctor says you're cool, that's fine. It's
yes, after Craig has the most,
but you're kind of right there with it. Like he's just kind of like, yeah, he's the Doctor. He came in, won everybody over. Doesn't he do that like pretty much every episode anyway? So,
which is interesting because, of course, again, this follows the God complex where the Doctor runs up against the questioning that is asked of him in that episode of like, why do you just assume you can come around and tell us what to do and interact with us? And
well, I was actually thinking you were going to mention the midnight
as well. Yeah.
Like reversal of that.
Yes. We talked a lot about that in the midnight episode. Yeah, exactly. It's sort of been a theme with the randomizer recently. So it's nice to see the Doctor not just going back to being Mr. Popular, but also remembering why he likes humans and why he needs us.
Well, and how much they matter to him. I know it's just dialogue, and we never see the thing. I forget even the thing he was trying to get to, this cosmic event that only happens once. But even for him, even though he's got a time machine, he only has like one shot to go to it, and he skips it just to help Craig clean up his apartment so that it's all spotless and perfect for when Sophie comes home. And he has that line, I couldn't leave my mate in the lurch.
Yeah.
And it's just such a nice, heartfelt moment. It's one of these things like, if you've ever watched How I Met Your Mother and been shocked about how that show could actually affect you sometimes, which I certainly was, it very much reminded me of that. And it's probably one of the reasons that for closing time for me, even though it might not be my favorite episode, it's an episode I would certainly recommend people new to the show watch.
Yes.
Because it is delightful and heartfelt, and like it's almost like that final scene with him and Craig is all the comedy is almost leading up to that, right? Like it's you laugh and you win them over and you want to see these people succeed, and then that scene at the end just has that extra emotional punch. Like, oh wow, they really love each other. They really are like friends.
And you want the Doctor to have that because he's so clearly not functioning well on his own, and so clearly troubled, so clearly just down and having a bad time, as we all are sometimes. And it's kind of it's a beautiful mirror of those moments in our life where we need a mate but we don't realize it.
And speaking of that, is this a good time to go into the 200-year gap?
Yes.
So
let us fly straight into that 200-year gap.
Yeah.
We have one shot to do it in the TARDIS, just like Exodore.
I want to say I'm kind of surprised this isn't talked about more either within the show or in fandom. This gap between the God complex and closing time, where apparently the Matt Smith Doctor lives 200 years of adventures, either on his own. I mean, it's a thing that's fascinating, and I like the idea of this sort of mystery time he had, just because there's a lot to unpack there if anyone ever wants to. But I'm also like a little bit annoyed at Stephen Moffat for deciding on a massive scale just for the heck of it, right? Because he doesn't really do anything with it. Like, as far as we can tell, Matt Smith is still, cares about Amy and Rory the same way. He still is basically the same guy who left, right? There's no like memory gaps or whatever, or even references to anything that happened.
Yeah.
So,
Well, time is
kind of like, yeah.
First of all, time is a little out of joint in this episode, we should mention,
right,
because it is both before and after Lake Silencio, right? Because we see Amy and Rory clearly in their post-Doctor life after the God Complex, and Amy's become famous. Right. She's on the perfume ad for Petrichor, which is a shout out to the Doctor's wife, by the way. And for the girl who's tired of waiting. And that's a wonderful scene. So we're clearly meant to think it's after all the Lake Silencio events, but it's also before, according to the date on the newspaper, and the fact that the Doctor flies to America at the end of it, or goes to America at the end of it, and picks up his Stetson from Craig. So it's both before and after. And this, I give Moffat some leeway here, because first of all, time is about to go seriously out of joint at the beginning of The Wedding of River Song.
True.
But also, I kind of like the idea that the Doctor just sort of has a missing 200 years that he can't remember what he did with. Because isn't that the same with all of us as we get older? You're kind of like, wait, it's 2022? It was just 2017 a minute ago.
And for a Time Lord, that would be like hundreds of years.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm sure he was just like reading the paper and lost track of time.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, I just feel like if you're going to pick that number for whatever reason, 200 years, like give it some thought, like what happened, like there, it just seems like it's a real missed opportunity, because I do like the idea, but if it was 200 years, you think he would have been like, had some companions in the meantime, and maybe even people that meant more to him than Amy and Rory, and saved the universe on a bunch of other levels. And it's sort of this weird minimizing thing that you almost feel like, well, for that to make any sense, you kind of need him to do something either similar to what he did in this last episode, where he lives, I think, almost 1,000 years or something on the Christmas planet, or put him in stasis or something like that, because it's a thing that confounds me as a fan who wants to sort of know everything about the Doctor's life, like what happened, like what's like, it could be like books and books and books and books in there.
Well, I tell you what we should do. Maybe we should start this campaign right here and now on Pull to Open. We've got RTD returning.
Ooh,
we hope that Matt Smith is going to come back for the 60th anniversary anyway.
Right.
Let's just have RTD writing Matt Smith, and writing that 200-year gap.
Do it.
Just telling, I mean,
don't put him in a confession dial.
Yeah.
Allowed.
Well, that wasn't even, to my mind, I mean, that's a whole other debate we can have when we watch Heaven Sent, but to my mind, that did not age, that doesn't count, didn't age the Doctor, because he was just one day old.
Yeah.
Or, one day older.
Right. No, agreed. Say. I think that's the consensus.
Yeah, exactly. So even though he somehow felt all that pain of his other teleported selves. But yeah, so let's start that campaign. And while I mention the word teleport, I feel like we need to start a new segment here on Pull to Open, which is Star Trek references we totally forgot about.
That's true.
In Doctor Who, because we said those many episodes ago that I believe was it The Lie of the Land. We said we thought maybe had the only Star Trek reference in Doctor Who.
Was it The Lie of the Land? I mean, I think that was the second one. The one was, oh God, now someone's gonna have to. I can't even remember our own continuity now. There were a couple.
We need to add it to the spreadsheet.
It was Oxygen, Space the Final Frontier.
Yeah.
And then
right there at the cold open. Yeah.
And then someone said we went to The Lie of the Land. And then, you're right, because that was the first one, The Lie of the Land, but we weren't counting them then. Then it was Oxygen. Then we remembered The Lie of the Land, and then there was another one with Klingon, right? That was in
in the God Complex. So this is two Star Trek references in a row, chronologically speaking.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And then this
Yeah.
one is it's right there in your face. I can't believe I forgot it because Craig just directly references Star Trek. He just goes, "Oh, a teleport, like a Star Trek transporter thing."
Yeah.
And I think it might be one of this might be the only time the Doctor actually says the word Star Trek
Yes.
because he responds to, "Yes, it's a Star Trek transporter thing," like. So
Very,
that
very
might
good
it
Matt
might be
Smith
notable for
impression.
that one. Um, and then it actually looks like a Star Trek transporter, the little circular thing on top of the elevator that the Cybermen put in there. Um, and it's kind of cool how they designed that because it just looks so out of place and so like 60s sci-fi tech.
It
Looks like
does.
something out of like The Day the Earth Stood Still or something like that.
I always have a problem with transporters, and it's the classic geek problem of you're basically, which addressed by Heaven Sent again. You're killing yourself every time and starting afresh with a new being. But I guess
Indeed.
transporters have been used multiple times in Doctor Who, and it's not anything out of the ordinary to see it here.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you got to judge the use of the transporter on how gratuitous it is, how much of a Deus Ex Machina it is, and
It is basically it's here as Chekhov's gun. It's Chekhov's
yeah,
transporter with apologies to the Enterprise's Chekhov.
this is
We mean the author Chekhov.
it's a tough thing in Star Trek too, because Star Trek has to deal with this every episode, which is and they actually to some extent succeed. Like but they don't always. Which is why don't they just use the transporter in to get them out of every single thing or solve every single problem, right? Because it can put things virtually instantly, like right next wherever you want them, essentially.
Yeah.
So there's fewer teleporters in Doctor Who, but that's essentially the same issue, and you need to sort of contort your plot often to make sure that they can't just use it to get out of every single thing. Though when I like in some episodes when they realize they almost step out of the show when they realize the transporter can get them out of the thing and they just do it. Like
Yep.
you're expecting some like that could be a fun mislead. Um, in this case, I think it's fine. It wasn't glaring to me at all. I think the main thing I would say, and this is because it's in the hands of the Cybermen, why don't the Cybermen just use it willy nilly? And it's obvious. I mean, it's power. These are
Yeah.
very struggling Cybermen that are siphoning, scraps of electricity from a department store just to
Yeah.
survive. That it would make sense they didn't really have a lot of power to operate their teleport willy nilly. So
Now they are very low powered Cybermen, and I do sense our Cybermen discussion hoving into view. So I want to say before we get into that, I want to say something personal, particularly about Bitey the Cybermat.
Oh yeah,
which is that my wife and I we bonded over Doctor Who to start with. We watched it our entire relationship. We mostly started watching the new show together. I was like a season ahead of her. I got her caught up, and
Can I be the audience here and
Aww. and then we also developed over the years, as one does in any relationship, dumb little things. One of our dumb little things was we have these bitey creatures that kind of talk to each other. And if you're on YouTube right now, you can see that I'm demonstrating a bitey creature. And often they are evil creatures. They you can wake up with a bitey creature in your face,
if
about to eat you.
It's a sock puppet minus the sock.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, they're sort of very base creatures and tend to enjoy fooling each other into being consumed. But we call them the Bites. And so for us to watch, and I didn't actually remember until I rewatched it, but I now remember that we loved this at the time. For us to watch a Doctor Who episode that features the words "Come along, Bitey,"
nice.
was just very special for us, and therefore I will defend this episode against all comers. Just on that reason alone, the fact that there is a Cybermat called Bitey, the fact that it allows the Doctor to say that, just very, very special for personal reasons.
Gets an extra star from you.
Indeed, 6 stars. 6 stars for this episode. But also, I kind of like it when, and it's not a thing that Doctor Who hasn't done before or since, right? This sort of the idea of the lonely outpost.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of the it's the trope of the Japanese soldier after World War II, right? That's kind of what we're facing here. It's the little lone outpost of sometimes it's Daleks, sometimes it's Cybermen, sometimes it's another villain or monster that we've never heard of before, and sometimes it's the good guys. Sometimes it's sort of the rescue situation.
Yeah.
But I kind of like that. It's always a good way around the low budget needs. And I kind of like it when the monsters are a bit desperate and low powered and don't really have the guns, or can't quite figure it out, and you kind of know that they're going to fail, and they're almost sympathetic because of that.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. That's and I will say I was much more warm to that idea of this being a Cyberman episode with frankly quite pathetic Cybermen going in the second time, and could really appreciate all the chemistry and the story itself more. So I definitely came away really liking it, probably more this time. But I will say, well, first of all, I want to talk about Bitey, who is awesome. Bitey is like a great character in this episode.
He really is.
Like
it just the teeth just appear out of nowhere. It's fantastic.
It's the Cybermat almost makes up for the Cyberman, because first of all, it's the first appearance of the Cybermat in the new series, which is great. That's a big fan pleasing moment. And it's upgraded. I mean, it really is. I mean, we haven't seen the Cybermets being actually cybernetic before with organic parts, and they went out of their way to do that here, and they made it really kind of scary and gross and fun all at the same time, which I really really liked. So and it it gets to do some stuff. It's actually actively doing things like siphoning power.
And there's a great scene in Craig's kitchen where they're basically both terrified of it, and they sell that really well. They're kind of terrified of this thing that's flying out at them and around the kitchen. And I love the little behind the scenes detail that Matt Smith actually broke one of the Cybermats they were using with a frying pan.
He was so in the moment.
And this is the most Doctor Who moment ever, that they just mended it with a piece of tape.
Yeah.
And then just carried on.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, it was. I got that too in the little behind the scenes bit. Yeah, it speaks to how much Matt Smith was into it, right? Like they were clearly like he's such a good actor, and he was obviously really delivering it in this episode. It's very apparent on screen, but he was super into the scene. But like the designer talked about the Cybermat. I really liked that he based it on the classic designs. Didn't try to do something too different, and it's really good. The only thing I would say, like, actually, it has nothing to do with the Cybermat, but what I didn't like is how they did stuff with the sonic screwdriver this episode, almost turning it into a weapon, where he kind of disables the Cybermat with it, which you kind of get, but he does it in such a almost violent way that it seemed a little out of character. He uses this again, the sonic screwdriver again in a similar way with, I think, in the cyber ship, where you actually see beams come out of it, which also didn't seem right for me. Like to see the sonic screwdriver like shoot something out of it. That's I don't know what the choice was there, but I'm really glad it was a one-off thing, and I think people sort of behind the scenes rightly recognized, this is not really how the sonic screwdriver should be used. Both in terms of visually, and it shouldn't feel like a violent thing, but it also like it's too much of a get it out of jail free card. Then if it could actually like hurt and disable the bad guys in an overt way like that.
Yeah, and it's especially in an episode where the Doctor sort of Doctor splains the Sonic to Craig, and Craig's like, can't you turn that thing down? And Doctor's like, it's a Sonic, it works by sound, dummy. And then to have it work by light is a little weird, especially after he said that. So yeah, get your Sonic. And it is sort of a problem with Doctor Who, even now, there's a little over reliance on it with 13, with Jodie. You wave it around, you make the noise, and then you look at it as if there's a readout on the screen.
Right.
And that sort of covers just about anything, learning about just about anything, neutralizing just about anything. It is sort of the get out of jail free card of Doctor Who. And
I always thought, just throwing out a fan theory here, and I'm sure I'm not the first to throw it out, is that even though there's no screen on the Sonic, I always kind of felt like Doctor's low-level telepathic skills are somehow attuned to it. So it's and either that or he's just so good at sort of reading whatever the very subtle light patterns and sounds it's making that he sort of gets the information he needs from it just by like waving it around.
Yeah, maybe there's some sort of implant or some way that does actually throw up a screen in his eyes or her eyes that we just can't see as the viewing audience.
RTD, feel free to take that. Show us the Iron Man view of the Sonic use for the Doctor. That'd be neat.
Indeed.
Coming season 14. So let's get to the Cybermen.
Yes.
Now, okay, look, let's just start with given what I said. They are not well treated in this episode. Now, even taking your criticism or your observation into account, which is that these are sort of the last outpost Cybermen, they're desperate. That all makes sense, and I can forgive a lot given that, which is that they're weak. They don't have weapons. It's actually they're actually seem designed that way. That in this case, they're even their chest units. They don't have the. I don't think they have any logo, not even the Cybus logo, which is sort of a thing that fans like to spot.
Well, that was from the alternate universe Cybermen, right? Which these are not.
Right, which they I don't think they could be.
Yeah.
Now I'll get the nitpick out of the way really quickly, which is that a cyber ship crashing somewhere in England 200 years in the past doesn't fit into any part of Cyberman timeline at all. This, you could write around that easily, with some kind of time ship or whatever. You're like, honestly, there's a million things you could do to write it, but it's there's not even a line of throwaway dialogue that tries to send us into some continuity somewhere. It's Cybermen landed 200 years ago. I'm willing to go with it, but please respect the continuity is all I'm saying. So, but the other thing is the worst thing they do in this whole thing is that for the Cybermen, even though it works as a story element, is that they convert Craig, or at least begin to convert Craig. I do know they do sort of say begin. They're doing the first stage of the conversion process, which is to remove emotions and apparently put the helmet on, which is weird.
Yeah.
But and also in the weirdest way where it welds down the middle. It's like, well, there's already a lot of seams on this thing. You don't have to weld it down the middle. That's really weird. But regardless.
It's very old. They're very old-fashioned Cybermen. That's the way they used to do it 200 years ago.
Yeah. So, what happens is Craig, he has his feelings for his baby. Love overpowers the process. Boom! Everybody, the Cybermen all explode, etc. Obviously, it's very hand wavy. It almost literally, like in terms of like how we're getting rid of the villains here, but it's also like it takes away the Cybermen's most fearsome thing, which is that conversion. Which is done, I would say, extremely well in the Cybermen's first appearance in Age of Steel, where they convert the alternate Jackie, and there's just this. I don't want to spoil episodes we haven't gotten to yet, but it's like there's this pathetic sort of line and very sad line that the alternate Pete has, where he's like, "Well, maybe we can reverse it," and the moment he says it, you can't. And that she's just gone, and it's a horrific end. And that to me, like that, if you're going to do the Cybermen and you're going to have conversion even mentioned, like that's their whole thing. That's why they're horrific. That's why they're class A monsters in Doctor Who. And to see them,
but it isn't the first time. Even
as a fan of the Cybermen, you just kind of like, oh, that's.
Well, we remember.
Give us a different monster, Moffat. You didn't have to use the Cybermen here. It was clearly done for reasons that are for fan pleasing and ratings, and that's fine. Go ahead and do that for those reasons, but then don't do a rug pull and then make it look like make these monsters like really pathetic. Then those of people like me, like Cybermen, I mean, you could probably tell they're my favorite monsters in Doctor Who. Like it just robs us of what we would like to see, which is a proper Cybermen episode where they really are a threat. Okay,
sure, and I think that this could be dealt with by in the next time on. The little trailer for closing time that shows you an image of the Cybermen. I think we just need sort of a flashing sign over the trailer that just says, not a full-on Cybermen episode, don't get your hopes up, or something like that. Just set our expectations, because I agree.
Wait until the next one. Wait until Capaldi.
Yeah.
Let's see some good stuff.
But on the conversion front, I mean, we've also in our journey here seen Danny Pink.
Right.
in why am I forgetting the name? Dark Water, Death and
Dark
Heaven.
Water. Yep.
Dark Water, Death and Heaven. We went there fairly early on in our journey, and he wasn't basically an unconverted Cyberman or half unconverted. I mean, we've seen the show play around with conversion and whether it is full on, whether it's not. The this works within canon because the alternate universe Cybermen that you're talking about, the converted Jackie, that could be a different process. It could be less reversible, in the Cybermen in our universe that we also see in Dark Water, Death in Heaven. Like their conversion could be a little more off. In our universe, they didn't quite. It's the Windows rather than the Mac OS of conversion software. It kind of breaks down, and maybe there's a virus in it. I don't know. But yeah, maybe we need something a little bit more hand wavy. I agree. We
Well,
definitely
I would
got room for
say
that.
they, I think it could have been mitigated, not solved, with a couple of different choices that would have been probably less dramatic, unfortunately. So I could see why they wouldn't do them. But to your point about Danny Pink and everything, I think you're right. I think I would say you're probably dead on in different Cybermen and different conversion processes. But I would also say in Danny Pink's case, like he's pretty clearly like physically like altered in a way that looks irreversible.
Yes,
Like he doesn't. He has more of him left, but I don't think there's any way back to normal human Danny Pink from there without something really,
for sure.
really, sci-fi happening.
And this
Now,
is why when you're doing your cyber conversion, don't do the emotions first. People just do the body first. This whole episode is a training video for Cybermen on how not to do conversions. Right?
absolutely.
If you
Well,
do the emotions first, then a baby's cry can just break through it.
yeah. Do the last. Do emotions last, guys. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. What they could have done was like simply don't do the mask, like the helmet part, where don't start doing physical things that are sort of unnecessary to underscore the point that he's losing his emotions. You could have him sort of go in to more of a booth and have electrodes stick into his neck, and then just watch. And I think it would have been actually might have been better to watch his expression change. Like happy-go-lucky Craig suddenly, like just suddenly looks super dead and
Yeah.
cold.
Slack-jawed, kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think even it's part of maybe this is the problem with James Corden. He just looks too lively in general. He can't play dead. But I do want to absolve Moffat from both of the problems here. First of all, choosing the Cybermen in the first place, and the decision to put the helmet on Craig were both apparently choices that Gareth Roberts, the writer, made, because he felt that season 6 needed a classic monster. It didn't have one.
We're just shifting the blame then, are we?
Yeah, exactly. We're passing the buck down to the writer, who apparently made these choices. But I kind of like, and with the putting the helmet on Craig, he wanted the audience to really feel like Craig could be converted, like this was potentially irreversible. And the reason I think that scene works is because we all have that feeling about babies crying, right? Even those of us who are not parents, we're just fundamentally affected on some level by the sound of a baby's cry. And it kind of fits with that whole thing about the doctor that we got in the the Clara episode, Hellbent, we went to, where was it Hellbent? Or basically he's threatening, no, it's Face the Raven, he's threatening revenge on the whole universe, and she says that'll end with the first crying child, and it. Even the doctor isn't immune to that sound.
Oh, even quite the reverse.
Yeah,
he's affected.
I would have loved some sort of maybe way to tie that into the sonic screwdriver, right? Which the doctor's explaining the sonic nature of it. Like, but both of these babies and screwdrivers both work by sonic. Boy, do they! Yeah. So I kind of like that. It works for me. I know that it kind of plays fast and loose with the Cybermen mythology written large, and I think if I were a larger fan of the Cybermen, I might be a little more disappointed by that fact and find it a little harder to get past. But
yeah,
what
but
can I say?
Again, I'll come back to what I said at the beginning. I did get past it this time around, which is to say, like, I was able to better appreciate the overall episode, which I think really succeeds.
Yeah.
overall. And it's also like it to my earlier point, it even though it might not be the best episode for hardcore fans, flip it around. It's an amazing episode for people brand new to the show. Like I would say, yeah,
Yes.
100% watch The Lodger and watch Closing Time. They're both really, really fun and really give you like good character and good drama, and you might get hooked. Watch out.
Yeah,
They're
you
that
know
good.
what? I mean, I think I mentioned this in one of our previous episodes that I usually use Blink as a way to
Mhm.
introduce new fans. I'm starting to wonder after this if the Lodger / Closing Time are not better
Well, and you could even
introductions.
honestly, this is the thing, an interesting randomizer testing us. Like, I think you
Mm,
could come into Closing Time
mm,
and get it because he kinda
yeah.
like, you kinda understand from just from the first scene where he rings the doorbell, it's like, "Hey, we're old friends. Oh, I guess this is a guy the doctor knows."
Mm,
And you like my daughter, like my daughter's 8, but she
mhm.
actually watched it with me and my family as I was prepping for the podcast, and she was really liked it. And even
Wow, that's
even
interesting. Because you've mentioned that your daughter will not watch new Who. She'll not
not
watch
won't watch it.
Flux.
She's
Yeah.
she yeah, she hasn't been a fan of Flux, but she will sometimes sit down and watch. I think even
Mm.
though she's not as much of a fan of Doctor Who as me and my son, maybe even my wife, she knows that we like it, and she'll sit and watch on various things. And this time she was like, "Yeah, this was fun." And she even that final scene, which is the arc plot bit with River,
Mm.
she was like, "Wow, can we watch the next one?" Like, she thought that was really, really
Mm.
cool, even though I'm sure none of the imagery made sense to her with the spacesuit and the lake and all that stuff. It was like, "Oh, yeah, this is it's selling me on it," you know? But I
But
think it was she was sold on it because the episode that she had just watched was super fun and
right.
really liked it.
And then that imagery is really strong, and you have the nursery rhyme playing it over it
Mhm.
at the end, and the little solving of the mystery of what does the tick-tock goes the clock nursery rhyme. Turns out the last line is tick-tock goes the clock until River kills the doctor, which
Wow.
is really that sticks with you.
Take
And
note, TikTok fans.
yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's pre-TikTok. I hadn't even thought of that till this very moment. Um, but I mean, the experience that she's having there is kind of why I'm almost jealous of kids these days being brought up on New Who, because that is part of the joy of Doctor Who when you're introduced to it as a child is the sort of the psychedelic trippiness of the images. You don't even need to understand the story. In fact,
Mhm.
it's often worse if you do.
Definitely
Like
the case
to
with
us,
on our last journey with Image of Findal. Yeah.
yes, exactly. I mean, exactly. You watch Image of Fidel as a kid, which I didn't, but if I had, I'm sure I would have just remembered the glowing skull and the gold paint of the Findel's
Mhm.
face, and those would have stuck lodged in my head and been hard to dislodge. And with this, again, as adults, like season 6 isn't everyone's favorite. I hold a candle for it, but I can also see that it's kind of the whole thing with Lake Silencio and like why is it an astronaut suit, and it's all a bit sort of super convoluted and confusing. But as a kid, you're just like, wow, astronaut
Mhm.
coming out of the lake,
That's
wild,
cool.
trippy,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Wonder what
throw a
she's got.
nursery rhyme over it, and it appeals, I think, to that sort of psychedelic child mindset before our filters kick in and we learn what is and isn't a good story, right?
Yeah. Do you think that bit at the end, um, I don't know, is it too extraneous for the episode, or is it, I think we're coming to the conclusion that it actually kinda works just
Yeah.
because 'cause you're suddenly overloaded with this, crazy stuff just after you've had this, as we were saying, the change of pace with the doctor visiting Craig, and then it's like you're just starting to rev back up right into that sort of season finale. But of course, we
You
watched it
you
out of
are.
order, and we're not going to watch the season finale next, presumably. I mean, we never know; the randomizer might surprise us.
It
But
might take us to another River episode, but I think that the thing that I always love about River episodes is they just give you another bit of the River story out of order. So you're kind of
mhm,
used to that whenever River shows up, as she does here in university robes. Kind of, they're sort of trying to make her look a bit younger. She's only just become Dr. River Song, and she's super obsessed with the Doctor. Definitely looks like young River in this, and that totally works. Even though we can't really remember at this remove who Madame Kevorkian is and what that whole deal is, and the
Right. And I think, she has all these lines, and she has them, I think, in most of her appearances, where she tries to assert a certain superiority, like I'm 5 or even 10 steps ahead of you. Like, you think
Mm,
here River is just kind of hapless, so it's not quite the same as in When a Good Man Goes to War. But they really pour that on, that she is like evil mastermind,
mhm.
the eye patch and all of it.
And she has the
Um,
silence with her. It's
mhm.
always fun for me to see the silence. They are one of my favorite monsters. And River does a great job of seeing them and then forgetting about them, which is just a nice little touch there. And also, silence will fall when the question is asked
Mhm.
is used in this episode, and that's kind of a recurring catchphrase of season 6 and season 7, right? It isn't solved until Time of the Doctor, what that means, but the answer is actually given here in this episode, and this is one thing that I hadn't remembered about Closing Time, and
Hmm.
it chokes me up when it happened, which is right at the end we hear Stormageddon / Alfie's first words.
Oh, that's right.
And there's Alfie's first words are Doctor Who?
I thought it was just
Which
Doctor.
no,
Doctor Who?
he says Doctor Who
Oh, wow.
with a question mark at the end. Doctor Who? And that is, of course, the question. When the
W
question is asked, silence will fall.
Nice.
We don't know this. We didn't know that at the time because it was still a season away. But the fact that Moffat was evidently already thinking about that, maybe, and inserting it here. Although it was that wonderful thing at the end of the Wedding of River song, right? Where he
Mhm.
finds out what the question is. We don't find out the context of that question being asked until Time of the Doctor.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, and what the silence was, and what
Mm.
that actually meant.
Yes.
When silence will fall. Yeah, I thought it was, in this case, like the thing at the end, obviously, like, it's everything I said, sort of revving up to the season finale. Um, but I definitely think, like, you kind of needed it almost, because otherwise, well, you have the Doctor sort of going off, but
Mm.
there's no punch to it, right? Like, there's a it's because it's throughout the episode. Like, he's obviously, very melancholy and very, he's got this dark cloud over him, trying to
Mm.
think about, or trying even not to think about, like, the thing he has to do, and to go off to die. And then you rather than ending on a somber tone, you end on this, like, suspenseful tone, which, I think for Doctor Who, I mean, that's what you want to do, right? I mean, it's like
Yeah,
you
you
got to
do.
end with, like, the cliffhanger,
And we
and
haven't
a
even
hell of a
mentioned
cliffhanger.
it, but there's that you mentioned briefly the scene where he says goodbye to the kids and he's looking really sad and he's like, I'm here, tell them I was here to help. And you have a sort of a little thing which might not work because it's a kind of a change for the episode and it suggests that we're watching a documentary, right? You hear the voiceovers of those kids many years later,
Right.
saying basically they didn't realize that this was the Doctor's death, right? They're layered on to make you think that this really is the end of the Doctor's life.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
also like, if you unpack that a bit, like, okay, these are
mm,
kids in 2011. When
yeah,
were they interviewed? By
yeah,
whom? And
yeah.
for what exactly? Like, I mean, I like the idea of some future time historian taking them out of time to interview them about the Doctor, and then
Yeah,
putting them back in their time stream, with their memory wiped,
yeah.
of the interview. Anyway,
Well, there's so many things in Doctor Who that could do that, right? My brain goes immediately to the what was the Christmas episode, Twice Upon a
oh,
Time.
the silvery futury things. What
Yeah,
are they
the
called again?
Witness. I think it was just
Witness or
sort of the
justice
Witness
or something.
I think it was the Witness
Yeah.
program. It's just plucking people out of their time streams right before their death. So maybe it was that. Maybe it was taken from that. Or maybe, given that it's now 2022 and those kids will be adults now, it is our job. We have to go and fill in
Hmm.
for this thing that the Doctor, the time historians that cover the Doctor evidently forgot to do, which is interview these children. Sometimes you just, have to be the Beethoven who's missing in the world.
Right.
Pete. I think we need to make this our mission.
We've got to make the paradox happen, or prevent the paradox. We just,
Exactly.
it's all spelled out for us.
Or maybe this is an early answer to the segment we have at the end of the show. Where is the Clara Splinter?
Ah. Oh, wow. That's a pretty good one. Cool. Sure.
The
Should we cut
Clara
to that?
Splinters.
What else do we have to talk
Yes.
about?
Maybe the Clara Splinter is the one who sort of keeps him going for 200 years, kind of nudging him into ever more fun things to do that won't necessarily debilitate him. And keep him on
Clara?
track.
So she basically was, well, I think it's a given she was helping him out in those 200 years.
Yeah. Behind the scenes.
But if she's somewhere else, is she in the shop? Is she? Oh, I got it.
Yeah.
Is she? So here's the thing. There's all these reports in the newspaper about missing people, but it's such a local story. She's the reporter. She's writing all that up to make sure it's noticed.
She's gone to Sarah Jane Smith for her journalism lessons.
There we go. Oh wow, I'm loving this this either novelization or Big Finish adventure.
Yeah, seriously, we got to do a whole Big Finish series called the Clara Splinter.
All right, I like it. Clara's the reporter.
Yeah, we've either got to just throw money at Jenna Coleman or find a very good Jenna Coleman impersonator.
Or she might have deleted all the texts. There's at some point, this is something we didn't talk about, maybe we should touch on, which is that there's this convoluted sort of plot contortion to make sure Craig has to have Alfie all the time.
Yeah.
And there's a good line where he's like, the safest place to be is alongside you, Doctor, because he tries to get Craig away from here, because any sensible person who wants to look out for their safety would flee. But I like that line because it's like a total kind of reversal of that, and it's true. Honestly, in the TV world logic of Doctor Who, it is actually safer to be with the Doctor than to be some hapless bystander who's killed by whatever it is, the monster or the Earth's crust getting penetrated or whatever. So that's awesome. But then there's they add to something that's a little bit unnecessary, which is okay, but they're like, oh, he can't reach any of the family members, ostensibly because he told them all, or they've all been told to leave him alone, because he can do it on his own, and so they can't reach them. There's some line there, and I think maybe Clara is intercepting those texts and making sure he needs to have Alfie with him at all times so that he can defeat the Cybermen at the end.
So the Doctor can buy a papoose on his discount, his store discount, which I love that line. Has the Doctor ever bought anything on a store? Has the Doctor ever bought anything before? We don't even know.
We tried to buy that drink in Planet of Fire, remember? Venusian money or something?
Yes. So he's pretty pathetic at it, but apparently when he gets a store discount from working at the store, he just goes hog wild, buys a papoose for his best mate.
He definitely goes hog wild in this one a bit. Okay, cool. Okay, so we figured out Clara.
Yeah,
a few things that she could have been at. What if the evil plot had succeeded? Which I shudder to think about, because as much as I love the Cybermen, I don't want them to off Craig.
Yeah, they would have offed him. For the evil plot to have succeeded, I think you need some way of making sure that Stormageddon doesn't cry,
or when he hands him to the shopwoman there, I forget her name. She makes a very wise choice of perhaps leaving to calm the baby and make sure they're sort of in a safer place, and so he can't hear Alfie. Yeah.
Yes.
Either way, it's Alfie can't be heard, and Craig submits to conversion.
Maybe it is the Clara Splinter who's making Stormy cry in that moment. But we should definitely. So the shopwoman is Val. Okay. I would like to give a shout out to Linda Barron, who plays Val, and she is. I didn't recognize her immediately, but she has a long storied history in Doctor Who. She provided a voice for the Gunslingers, I believe.
The Gunfighters?
The Gunfighters, sorry, yes. She's heard as a singer in that.
Oh, she sang the tune,
yes.
The OK Corral, I forget what it's called.
Yes.
Wow.
She sang that.
She was cuts, man.
She was in Enlightenment.
Okay.
In 1983 as Captain Rack.
Captain Rack?
Yes.
Oh, wow. She's a veteran.
Yep. And now here she is again, just
I didn't even know this. I did research. How did I miss this?
But the thing that really excites me, and is going to mean nothing to you, is that she played Nurse Gladys Emanuel in the sitcom Open All Hours, which was a sitcom set in a grocer's and had David Jason and Ronnie Barker, and it's one of the most beloved sitcoms in British history. And she was sort of the unattainable nurse across the street that the elderly grocer was always infatuated with, in quite a dirty-minded way.
You're absolutely right. That means nothing to me.
Yeah. All our British listeners are going, yes, Open All Hours, Nurse Gladys and her tights. Yes, there was a lot of, she's always up a ladder, that kind of thing. It was a different time. It was a different time in British sitcoms. But bless her. Bless old Val. Linda Barron.
Val.
She's wonderful. So yeah, I'm glad that she's here, and this is actually a nice segue into she's the one who keeps saying it's okay, and it's actually nice to see a baby with its two fathers, and she's the one who starts the confusion around the Doctor and Craig are actually partners.
Yeah.
Which is Pete. I know you haven't seen Eve of the Daleks, which has just been broadcast. I've been urging people to watch it, even if they haven't seen Flux, because I think it is one of the best standalones in Doctor Who history. I'm going to make that claim right here and now.
Wow.
It is of a level of Blink and Heaven Sent. Like I maybe listen, like I'd put it in that pantheon. Love that episode. But a minor spoiler that the chemistry between the Doctor and Yaz kind of starts to come to a head in Eve of the Daleks.
Wow,
not really a big spoiler for what's going on at all.
Should have held my ears there.
Yes,
that's not because they're virgin ears. I just don't like spoilers, I guess. Don't miss it.
But this is another reason why the randomizer brought us here, I think, is as Doctor Who is having its first actual on-screen same-sex infatuation involving the Doctor, here is the first quote-unquote mistaken one. And is it really mistaken? I mean, the Doctor and Craig, they got some chemistry. I feel like they could be really good dads.
Oh yeah,
together
they could. They definitely have chemistry. But I think they definitely were going for more of a bro kind of moment between the two of them. Definitely, like I made the comparison. Now I Met Your Mother earlier. That final scene, the Doctor strikes me. He's Barney, and Craig is Ted. And that's I'm sticking by that analogy. It's working.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because they're also Val asked them if they're married, which could only have placed it
right. There were a number of places. Weren't that many places, but was it? Was the UK one of them? I assume it was.
It was. So this episode is 2011, right?
Yeah.
And same-sex marriage was only officially legalized in the UK in 2014.
Oh,
so it wouldn't. I guess you could go elsewhere and do it, or wherever you could have a civil partnership. But so that adds an extra poignancy to where Val asks, "Are you married?" and Craig says, "Oh, it's just a piece of paper, isn't it?" Because he thinks she's talking about him and his wife, him and his partner,
right.
whose name I keep forgetting. But yeah, so it's very much a kind of a thing that Doctor Who was right in the middle of making culturally acceptable.
Right.
Whereas now, with the Doctor and Yaz, it's so like you don't even think twice about it.
Sure.
Back then in 2011, it was still something that you had to address. And how they did it here was kind of ahead of its time.
Yeah, and I guess you could interpret Craig's comment as like maybe he's just super chill, super chill gay guy about whatever whether it's legal or not.
Yeah.
Or you could sort of, if you really wanted to, as a Doctor Who fan, while it's in the Doctor Who universe, they have had gay marriage since 2005 or whatever. Since there was, I don't know, there's probably some Target novel or Virgin novel that might have even made that claim that.
Well, there's another idea for RTD is he can make the Doctor go back and retroactively make gay marriage okay, perhaps throughout the 20th century. It would save a lot of lives.
Wow.
Yeah.
Impressive.
A little deep there. But
Okay, so
anyway,
I think we established what would happen on the if the evil plot had succeeded, which is pretty straightforward. I mean, basically, the Cybermen win and kill them both. I mean,
yeah.
that's
Do,
kind
do
of
they
it.
do they keep going and kind of convert the whole planet from their humble beginnings?
Well, if you take Jack Harkness's at his word
Mm,
in Cyberwoman, which is to say, like, this is how it starts, with just one, and soon,
mm,
like, entire, I forget what the exact analogy he makes, but he's, entire continents become converted. Yes, like, basically that this is how it would start without any um, proper resistance. And the
yeah,
Cybermen are quite good at this sort of subterfuge. In fact, it's their style because,
yeah.
from a logical standpoint, they don't want to waste, precious resources, which is themselves. They just hide and hide and hide until they can't hide anymore and they can come out in force. So if they keep doing that and there's no one paying attention the way the doctor is, I mean, they could probably have that entire city pretty quickly.
Yeah, the whole. I mean, is it supposed to be in London? I'm not even sure. I actually we should just pause and point out that this was filmed in a department store in Cardiff.
Hmm.
Late at night, apparently the crew got a bit loopy because they were doing shoots until 6 a.m. But also, the scenes in the house were filmed in an actual private house in Cardiff, which they just did because the family just gave over the house because they thought it'd be great for the kids to know that a Doctor Who episode. How freaking great would that be?
That would be so great. Oh my God, kids? I'm sure the parents were all like, you
Yeah,
know what? Doctor Who was filmed in my apartment. It's pretty cool, right? Huh? Matt Smith
exactly.
was right where you're standing.
That's right. They had to build an extra door for Matt Smith to smash through.
Yeah. Good
Which
stunt,
is
Matt.
yep. I mean, he didn't do the actual smashing through the glass
Damn
himself,
it.
but oh, sorry.
You shattered my
Uh,
illusion.
Shattered the illusions like the glass
Oh, the
of
shatter
the
of the illusion
patio
of the
door.
shattering.
But yeah, so it's sort of a tricky thing. How could they take over one person at a time? Like, how far would it have to get before people start noticing? And also, let's not forget, Sarah Jane is currently active.
True.
Um,
Yep.
Torchwood is active. Unit is active.
Mm.
Martha Jones is working for Unit at this stage, probably.
Well, consider this. So if they actually do what they say, kill the doctor and use him for spare parts, which presumably
Mm,
would regenerate from, there's a
mm.
TARDIS out there in the town
Yeah.
that they could conceivably get access to. But again, these are pretty pathetic Cybermen, right? They don't really have access to much advanced technology. So how would they get in? But if they were to get control of the TARDIS in some way, then all bets are off.
Hold up, though. I think we need to go back a step to the Doctor being converted because
Sorry,
I'm not going
harvested.
to
That's what they said
harvested.
they would do. They would just use this for spare parts.
But given that we are approaching the wedding of River Song,
Mhm.
where time breaks down because the proper death of the Doctor doesn't happen because River doesn't actually want to kill him, right? She doesn't actually want to fire, and that's the
Right.
reason that time gets out of joint. That would just happen earlier here if the Cybermen kill the Doctor before he's supposed to die by the shores of Lake Silencio.
Oh, that's true. So you don't have the Cybermen. Yes, you're right.
So we
You
go
you go
straight
straight
into
into it.
Churchill inside a pyramid and everything being all screwed up and weird.
Yeah, wow. Okay, I hadn't even thought of that. That's true. What did happen though? Wait a minute. I have to think back on exactly what that did because what happened with time? Oh, because she refused to,
She refuses to shoot the Doctor.
and that screws up all of
Therefore,
time.
all of time gets messed up and it's all happening at once.
Yeah, because that was a fixed event.
Yeah.
So I guess it
So it gets
depends if
pretty
this is a
trippy.
fixed event too, but it probably is. I mean, if the doctor's dying, so yeah,
The Doctor
man.
has to die. And we've seen how fucked up things will get if he doesn't. So that just happens earlier.
Right. Even though he dies this way, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it creates the
Yeah.
paradox. No, you're right.
And
Wow.
Cybermen would just all instantly disappear, or they'd all become like Egyptian Cybermen,
You know,
or something. I don't know.
this would be like a pretty funny scene. Could even be a climax in some episode where someone's about to kill someone. It's like, wait a minute. Was this meant to happen? And they get into this kind of debate on like, but what if Do you remember, like, because like there's been so many, we've seen it so many times, even with Amy and Rory when they jumped off the
Yeah.
building, that screwed everything up for the angels, and that reversed everything. So this kind of super dramatic moment where someone's about to die, and they sort of start debating, like, well, what's going to happen with time? Nothing,
Yeah.
well, or everything, or maybe the whole universe will get reset, or maybe you'll die instead, even though I'm killing you. Like, that'd be a pretty good, like, kind of back and forth, even if it's just for like pacing dialogue purposes.
We do need more of that Looper style stuff
Yes,
in
Looper.
Doctor Who,
That's
don't
what I'm
we?
thinking.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great reference. Doctor Who always needs to get more timey-wimey with it, which is again, not to spoil anything, kind of the reason why I love Eve of the Daleks.
Oh, okay.
Just throwing it out there.
Throwing out too much, but it's my own fault. It's my own fault for not watching. All right. Well, this is it. I think we are closing the book here on closing time.
Indeed.
And we should probably figure out where we're going next. So
We should.
let's open up the randomizer. Let's activate it. The randomizer,
Activate
of course,
the randomizer.
as all Pull to Open listeners know, consists of two parts. The Codex, which lists every single Doctor Who episode in order. It is slightly different than the story lists you may have seen online in various places, because we can interpret things a little differently on what stories constitute a single story and which ones don't. And so feel free to have a look.
Yeah.
We'll link to it in the show notes. But then the other part of the randomizer is, of course, the true random element, the executor.
Yes. For which we use random.org, which uses atmospheric noise to generate a random number, because computers are really, really bad at random numbers. So this is a true random number generator. And for the very first time, Pete, I've gone to random.org. I've entered a minimum number of 1 and a maximum number of 299.
Booyah. Nice.
And
okay.
we in our codex, the Sea Devils episode that is coming next will be the 300th. I'm very excited to enter the number 300 for the first time.
Indeed.
But
Cool.
I'm ready. I'm ready to go somewhere random in Doctor Who. So cue TARDIS noise.
All right.
And
get your hand over that big red button. Here we go.
I'm actually pulling a lever, but
is it red?
In my mind, I'm pulling a big red lever.
You could have just put your hand off the screen a little bit. All right.
Let me know. Give me a countdown.
All right, let's do it. 3, 2, 1.
Could I have a lemonade?
253.
Oh, wow. We're late again. We're new Who.
Let me find
it. In the Forest of the Night.
Ooh, Capaldi again.
Well, and it's seemingly loving these penultimate stories for the season. So this was the next to last story before Darkwater, Death in Heaven, which of course.
Oh my goodness, that's wow! The randomizer just wants us to bunch up in this fascinating way.
Yeah, I feel like the places we go. This is the thing I'm learning about the randomizer. The places we go end up creating sort of time gravity in our journey. Like,
yes.
It's really like we've gone to Capaldi so many times. Like, obviously Capaldi is the randomizer's favorite doctor. We get it. But in addition to going to Capaldi a lot, we keep going to these or places around certain parts of the Capaldi era. So this is we haven't gone back quite to this season yet, but we've been here before, and I'm sure we'll be there again. But in the Forest of the Night, interesting one.
Capaldi's first season, he's still trying to figure out if he's a good man.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I remember having issues with the In the Forest of the Night the first time. It's going to be an interesting one to watch again. And my brain is already working on reasons why the randomizer might have taken a saving closing time, but I will save that until next time.
I remember this one. It's very sci-fi.
It is.
This whole season, I remember with Capaldi, a lot of big ideas, big concepts, which might be
big scale.
Yeah. All right. Looking forward to journeying into the forest with you next time, Chris, and with everyone else listening to this podcast on Pull to Open, which is, of course, a podcast, as I just said. And if you missed it at the beginning and you're not subscribed for whatever reason, please subscribe. But also, more importantly, please leave us a review. We love those reviews. Keep them coming in. 5-star reviews we love the most, but write whatever you like. And whatever you write, we'd love to read it out on air, even if it's just a thumbs up emoji. So go ahead and leave it.
Yes, indeed.
Keep following us on the socials. As we were saying, we are super active on TikTok. Keep following us there. Keep loving the videos. Keep commenting. We love the discussion. We're at Pull to Open on TikTok. We're also on Instagram and Twitter, both at Pull to Open 63. And that is all we have for you today, everybody. Keep following us. Keep reviewing us. Keep closing up those shops just in case there are some cybernetic beings inside doing some stuff after hours.
Yeah, and do let us know. We should mention that we're kind of experimenting with an every week schedule at the moment.
That's true.
We've done closing time in record time, and here we are again. I think we're going to maybe try and do this in the next week. So Pull to Open in 2022 is getting more frequent. So please tell us if you like that increased frequency, or if you'd like us to slow down. You're like, hey, whoa, can only listen one episode every other week, guys. Let us know. That's fine. Put that in your review.
Or feel free, if you're having trouble finding time to listen, send us a list of the podcasts you listen to, and we'll tell you the other ones to junk. The ones that you can throw out. No, you don't have to listen to that guy. That he doesn't know what he's talking about. You know.
Yeah, we can do a TLDL for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can do. We'll do Joe Rogan in 1 minute. You know, just talk a lot about how you shouldn't get the vaccine. Some shit like that. You know, just tell us what podcast to summarize. I know, shooting fish in a barrel. Tell us what podcast you want us to summarize. We'll do it on the show. That'll give you more time to listen. But thank you for listening to this.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.